Welcome everyone to my channel. This is Enzo Eigen. Today we're looking at the perfect block mastery. My first video was on the mastery physical resistance, and I wanted to compare it with another mastery from the defensive tree. So even when you block in the game, you take damage. And the perfect block mastery gives you a chance to take 0 damage when you're blocking. So this is either 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4% depending on how many points you put in there. So one of the big differences in this mastery compared to physical resistance is this is a chance for something to happen. So at full level, you have 4% chance. And if you have a fight that's 25 blocks, that theoretically would mean you get 1 block in those 25s. But there's actually a little bit bigger distribution we need to look at. And so if you look at this chart here, you actually have a 36% chance of getting 0 blocks and a 37% chance of getting 1 block. So it's roughly equal to have 0, 1, and 25 blocks. And then of course you can also have 2 blocks of those 25s. That's about 19%. 3 blocks is reasonable, 6%. And then of course it gets lower and lower as you get more blocks. You theoretically could have 25 perfect blocks and 25 blocks, but that is very unlikely. You can see even at 6 blocks, you have 3 in 10,000 fights, you will have 6 blocks with 4% mastery. The first thing I wanted to test was to make sure that this mastery was working correctly. Unfortunately, Kabam has had a history of having their masteries not work as they were designed to. So I went into my masteries and the defensive tree, and of course I had to put on 4 in perfect block so I could use it for these tests. I wanted to find a lower ranked opponent who I could take a lot of blocks against. So I went to the Alliance War leaderboard and went to the Bronze 3 and found a Daredevil who was relatively low ranked, who I knew I could absorb a lot of blocks against. And take a look at this mastery. So you can see right here, this is block number 7. It's a perfect block, and you can see that 0 damage is indicated by this. Here is the second perfect block in this fight, and it comes off a special, which was good to see because I was a little uncertain whether specials would be affected by the perfect block mastery or not. So in this fight there were 81 blocks. I had perfect blocks at block 7 and block 24. So you'd think with a 4% chance of a perfect block, that's 1 in 25, I should have had 3. But if we look at the distributions, having 2, 3, or 4 perfect blocks in a 81 block fight at 4% are all pretty close, around 20%. And so getting 2 blocks is a realistic value if this is an actual 4% chance. So I wanted to do the test again, and I wanted to try to find a duel where I'd have more than 100 blocks. If you have more than 100 blocks, then I believe the data would be more and more accurate. So I went back to the Bronze leaderboard of Alliance War and found this nice juggernaut to duel against. So here's the perfect block again. This is block number 14 in this fight. And now you have another perfect block, at block 31, so we're ahead of the average now in this case. So block 109, I have another perfect block, and this is also during a special attack. So in this fight, I had 133 blocks, of which 6 were perfect. And the perfect blocks were at 14, 31, 66, 91, 109, and 115. So if we think about the expected value, at 150 blocks and 1 in 25 chance you would have 6, so this seems very reasonable. And again, if we look at the distributions, and I had to make my table bigger just because with more blocks there's a broader range of different distributions. And so we'll find though that of course 6 is a very reasonable percentage to get. This once again confirms that this mastery is working as intended. So to try to figure out if this mastery is worth it, I went and did more realistic fights. So I went into Alliance Quest and did a fight against some of the more common map 6 champions that you find here. So when I watched this Battle of Colossus, I realized how little I use blocks. I almost exclusively bait out specials, and only at the beginning of the fight do I really do much blocking. So back in Alliance Quest, I'm now fighting Ironman. And again, this fight does not have a lot of blocking. It's a longer fight, almost 80 hits, but between baiting specials and intercepting, there actually isn't a whole lot of blocking that occurs. So I took a look at my fight against this Crossbones in Alliance War. So in Alliance War I play much more conservatively, and since I'm concerned about his shrug off ability, I really just block a lot and try to bait out his heavies to get damage on him. That way I'm not taking very many risks. Look at one more Alliance War fight, and this is against a Stark SpiderMan on node 27, which is stun immune. So again, you think I'm going to take a lot of blocks, but between intercepting and baiting out heavy attacks and specials, there really isn't much blocking in this fight. One thing that's worth noting is the amount of damage I just take from blocking hits. One's over 1,000, one's close to 700. That's a lot of damage just to block an attack. So in the last part of this video, I want to compare the perfect block mastery versus physical resistance. Both cost about 4 points to get at maximum. So I made up a fight of 40 blocks, which is a little on the high side, and also each block has a damage of 800, which also is high, but these figures probably really don't matter too much. And then I looked at all the different probabilities of getting various amounts of blocks in this fight. And so what you're going to see is, not surprisingly, that getting 0, 1, 2, or 3 blocks in a 40 block fight are all pretty realistic occurrences. And then from that I took a look at the health and tried to figure out what would be the health benefits from this mastery. And so of course you do 0 blocks, you're going to get 0 block, you will get 0 health benefit from this, and then each block will give you 800 points. And so if you're really lucky, 1 in 10,000, you would save 6,400. So this mastery does have the effect where luck will really play a role in how much you save. from all of this, I tried to make sort of an expected amount of damage with this, and this is sort of, again, based off your probability and the amount of health that you were saved, and this gives you sort of a cumulative figure, which I'm going to use as my final result of how many health this mastery would save you over long-term fights. And you see the amount it does is about 1200 health. So when we look at the health savings with physical resistance, it's a much easier calculation because it's a permanent effect and it's always active. So if we have 40 blocks and 800 damage, so the 800 damage at 5% savings means that we're saving about 40 health per block, and then we multiply that by the total blocks, we get 1600 health savings in a fight. And so you can see it's much more than the expected amount of the perfect block mastery. It's true in the perfect block mastery, if you got 3, 4, or 5, which are likely to happen, you would save more health. But then you have to also take into account that physical resistance also works for light and medium attacks, reducing that damage and saving you health. So my conclusion is that physical resistance is a far superior mastery than perfect block. I hope you found this video interesting. Again, please leave any feedback or comments below. Goodbye.